Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Anupinder Singh, and today we are going to talk about the AWS networking and content distribution network. If you are first time here, just let me introduce myself first. And my name is Anupinder Singh, a software engineer turned university professor, and now a corporate technical trainer with Superwits Academy. So let's get started. As we have as I have already floated this particular uh, what do you call the poll on my LinkedIn profile, and thank you very much for the people who have voted for this particular set of options. And the poll clearly indicated that the people are more interested into getting the information about the AWS networking and the relevant stuff, right? So that is the reason why now for upcoming 10 to 15 lives, I'm going to talk about the AWS network and the content distribution. And you can clearly see the from overall 24 votes, this particular thing got 9 votes out of it, right? So definitely this networking cannot be done single-handedly. It is supposed to be worked out with the other services as well. So we are no worries, we are also going to talk about some of the other services in between wherever they are applicable for this, right? So let's get started with the AWS network and content distribution. So as we already know that AWS has a global infrastructure, and that global infrastructure itself is designed and built to deliver the particular flexible, reliable, scalable, and secure cloud computing platform, right? So let me just make this particular screen a little bigger. So the overall requirement is to basically have a computing environment which has a high quality global network performance. So network performance is very, very important because the global infrastructure has been uh, uh, is being distributed across the globe, right? So if you look at the overall picture throughout the globe, so whatever the blue dots you are looking at right now is basically the existing places where the particular AWS availability zones are there, and whatever the regions are there, and whatever the things you are looking into this particular diagram as a red, they are basically the upcoming regions that AWS is going to bring in, right? So overall, right now, 24 regions are up and live, and apart from this, around 6 more regions are going to be popping up throughout the globe, and you can see all those particular 6 locations that are there. Generally, the regions that are being chosen by the cloud service provider is based on how many users are residing around that particular geographical area. So based on that, they set up the infrastructure to facilitate the lower latency for the user application that are going to be hosted on the cloud on their cloud computing network, right? So that is what you have. So when you talk about the regions, they are basically the physical geographical locations with one or more availability zones, right? So this is very, very important. Availability zones, whenever you are working with any of the cloud computing platform, you will always find that their infrastructure is divided into the regions, and the availability zones are going to be there in each individual region, right? So these availability zones are going to give them a fail safe environment and more of a durability of their infrastructure, right? So the data replication across the region is basically controlled by you if you are hosting your application or hosting your resources on these particular regions specifically, right? And the communication between regions basically uses the AWS backbone network infrastructures, right? Which is having a 100 gigabits of speed, so that you can have a higher bandwidth and higher speed in sharing your data, and lower latency in terms of your point-to-point connectivity between the AWS regions. And because the availability zone is going to be there, right? So that is going to availability zones are going to be there. So typically every region is going to have 2 or more availability zones, and each availability zone will have their own data centers no residing in them. So overall, it's a big deal in terms of having the uh, reliability of the overall network. So if you look at this particular diagram, this clearly indicates that in a particular AWS cloud, you will find a particular region. So right now this is EU West 1. So these are being generally coded with these particular names, and each of this particular region has basically three availability zones. And the first availability zone has been indicated that there are three different data centers which are, geographically distant from each other, but they provide you the redundancy in the availability zone itself, right? So availability zone is nothing but it consists of different discrete data centers, and basically they are being designed so that they have a fault isolation. So if one zone is being compromised due to any of the natural disaster or some kind of power failure and so on, so the other availability zones can kick in, and then they can have the share of the load from that failed availability zone onto themselves, right? So that is where these availability zones are going to be working around with the particular set, right? And AWS always recommends that you replicate your data and resources across the availability zones for the resiliency for these particular set of failures and all that particular stuff. So this is very important, and that is why it says that the data replication across the region is basically controlled by you, right? Because you are going to have that control on that, okay, which region, which availability zone you want to put your particular set of data and so on, right? So this is the second stage of their infrastructure, and the last stage of their infrastructure is basically the point of presence, right? So on the chart you can see the different kind of edge locations, and different kind of regional edge caches and the multiple edge locations. So what is the primary use of the points of presence is that the AWS is responsible for having the lower side of the latency for the application delivery to the users of any of its clients, right? So for that particular purpose, they have created multiple entry points or multiple edge locations which are closer to the users or crowd of users. And by using its own content delivery network, whatever the background caching is required to be done for delivering the content with the lower latency, that is going to be performed by these particular point of presences. So this is basically a delivery network that is going to be there, and this delivery network is actually going to give a better user experience for the applications that are being hosted on the particular AWS cloud computing platform, right? So this is what is the utilization of this particular point of presence, and they play a very important role, right? And generally, whenever you're talking about the networking and the content distribution, there are a couple of services that are being introduced by the AWS into the particular set of system, and these are some of the frequently used ones. So if you can see, the Amazon VPC is one of the base fundamental networking technology that they have. The VPC stands for the Virtual Private Cloud, and Elastic Load Balancing, Amazon CloudFront to deliver the content, the transit gateways, which is going to be building up the single gateways or single centralized gateway for the on-premises or the AWS based locations. Similarly, Amazon Route 53 is going to be facilitating the domain name systems and caching the information and working around with the networking part and registering the domains and all that particular stuff. The direct connect is going to be there for building up the direct connection between the AWS regions or VPCs and the on-premises things. And similarly, the VPN is also going to be there, right? So these are just some of the fundamental services that is being offered, and uh, you know each of these particular services and along with the other features we are going to discuss in the upcoming live sessions, right? So today's live session is more prominently fixed towards the Amazon virtual private cloud, right? So just wanted to show you that how this particular virtual private cloud look like. So whenever you are on this particular Amazon Web Services management console, you go to the services and you go to this particular network and content delivery, right? You will find couple of options over here. I'll try to cover them all in the upcoming sessions, but today we are going to stress upon the VPC, that is the virtual private cloud, right? So if I click on this particular virtual private cloud option, it is going to take me to the separate dashboard, right? Now this dashboard is basically containing a lot of information, right? So because individually this is going to be created in a particular region, and that region is going to have its own set of subnets to be defined for a particular user, right? So VPC, when you are creating by by yourself, right? So there are two ways the VPCs are available. Whenever you are creating your AWS account, the VPC is already going to be created by the Amazon Web Services. It's a default VPC that has been generated, and most of the time when you are a first time user and go and create the EC2 instances, that is the VPC, default VPC, which you are using for creating your first instance and making that particular instance being applicable to have the public IP, and that is to be exposed to the outside world, and you can access that particular instance through that particular set, right? Whereas we creating a particular VPC requires a bunch of steps to be followed, and there are some specific information supposed to be given, right? So from where you are doing it, so you are going to do it from this particular set of portal. So here you can see what exactly is the portal look like. On the left hand side, you will have the specific menu that contains a lot of different kind of features that this particular VPC dashboard contains, right? And this has a range of features that are defined. So one is the virtual private cloud and the security around it, the network analysis that you need to do, the DNS firewall rules that you are going to fix, the network firewall that you are going to do fix for that particular VPC, the virtual private network that you need to create for that particular cloud, the AWS WAN, the transit gateways, and the traffic monitoring. So most of the services are being into this particular dashboard. That is the reason why I started with this particular VPC at the first place. And if you go and try to explore about the other features, broadly these particular set of features or network and content distribution is divided into five categories. One is the network foundation, where the VPC lies. One is the application networking, where the application related deployments, application related REST APIs and all that particular stuff is going to be managed. Then edge networking, where you are going to create your content distributions. Hybrid connectivity, where you are going to have the on premises and the AWS cloud hosted application to be interact with each other. And the network security, where you are going to look around the different kind of firewall related information and the application related security issues, right? So broadly it's five, but most of the things are going to be lied into this particular dashboard. That is why we are going to starting up with this particular set, right? So on the left hand side, it's a menu. If you try to hide it, you can hide it by using this particular menu, this particular button. And here you can see the resources by region. So you can see right now I have two different VPCs, zero NAT gateways that is going to be used for network address translation, no peer-to-peer connection. Then there are 7 subnets that have been created. There are a few routing tables that have been created for each of these particular subnets, right? So basically this is VPC. VPC contains subnet, and subnet contains the routing table, internet gateway information, and correspondingly few more things, right? And similarly, you have security groups, you have customer gateways, virtual private gateways, site to site VPNs, running instances, whatever are used for that particular, whatever are using that particular VPC, the endpoint services, the simple endpoints, the elastic IPs, DHCP options, and agrees only internet gateway, right? So that is going to be there. Right now, you can see the current status of this particular service is going to be operating normal. And you can also see that I'm right now operating in the Mumbai region, right? So VPC are region specific. So when you are creating them, they are going to be created in a specific region itself, right? So because this particular VPC is going to give you an option to have two different kind of setups. One is a launch VPC wizard and one is a launch EC2 instances. So that clearly indicates that how closely these both of these two things are being interrelated, right? So let me show you what is the way to create your particular virtual private cloud in a particular Amazon thing, right? And it's very easy, right? It's very easy, and you just need to follow these steps into this particular part. So as soon as I click on that particular wizard, you can see over here that the VPC settings are having two different parts, VPC only and VPC subnet, etc. So you can create only the VPC resources, or you can create the VPC along with the subnets, routing tables, internet gateways, and all that particular stuff, right? So this is the very first thing, that what are the resources that you wanted to create. Then you have to provide a particular tag associated with that particular VPC. Then you have to provide the IPv4 CIDR block. Now, what exactly is CIDR? This is basically a classless internet working domain that we are going to be utilizing for this particular purpose. And this is something which is very very what do you call, very very important content that you should be looking at, right? So VPC is something that is going to define the IP range for the for the particular classless inter-domain routing feature is going to be utilized over here. So right, so here I just want to mention one very specific documentation, that is RFC document number 1918, right? So if you go and read that particular documentation, this gives you an idea about the private IP addressing scheme. So that is what your AWS also supports to work around with, right? So that IPv4 CIDR manual input is going to be provided. So if you are providing some kind of network, so 10.0.0.0 and slash, if you are providing some kind of information 16 to 28, right? So this last information range from 16 to 28, and based on this, you are going to have your network. You're going to define your net mask, and that net mask is actually going to define that how many number of nodes you are going to have in this particular network, right? So that's going to be there. So there's one thing I want to mention, that VPC allows you to have the dual stack for your instances. So IPv4 and IPv6 both are being allowed to exist parallelly for a particular instance, but IPv4 is supposed to be set, whereas IPv6 is basically optional, right? So it's up to us that what we wanted to have. Similarly, you have a tenancy option to be set. Is it default or is it dedicated? So if you are going to look for the dedicated, so that means the dedicated resources are going to be utilized for this. Whereas if you are going to be put default over here, that is going to use the default settings for the EC2 instance. So these are basically going to be applicable when you are going to be creating the EC2 instances. So you define over here that you want to have a dedicated resources to handle your particular instance VPCs, and or otherwise you want to have a default tenancy which may have to share the resources among the other set of features. And finally you have a add new tag, right? So if you are only creating the VPC, these are some of the things that you are supposed to have. And this is one IP address management. IPAM stands for IP address management, that you have to put in case if you are bringing up your own series of IP addresses which you already own outside of the AWS into the system, right? So this option is available if you are going to have any IP addresses, static IP addresses allocated through the other third party. You can bring them over here, and then you can use the elastic IP to put them into the utilization, right? So the same happens with the IPv6 CIDR block as well, right? So it's up to us what features do we wanted to have. So that's only for the VPC part. But the interesting thing which comes out is the VPC and the other resources that you want to set up, right? So as soon as you click on this particular option, you get a chart which is going to be giving you a visualization on that how your particular VPC is going to be designed. Now, because I'm in a Mumbai region, so Mumbai region has a 3 availability zones. So this Mumbai region is being coded as AP South 1. So every individual availability zone in any of the region is going to be numbered by using the alphabets starting from A and so on, right? So you can see over here, when we are having this particular second option to be created, in this particular set, what is going to happen is the particular feature is going to ask you about that, okay, what should be the name of the VPC that you wanted to put, right? So we can put this particular name as live demo VPC, right? So that is the name we have given so that we can identify this particular name. Then you have this particular IPv4 CIDR block, right? Classless interdomain routing is going to be there for this particular prospect, right? So that is going to be working around for you, right? So here, just to quote you RFC 1918. So if I show you RFC 1918 document, I suggest you should go and read this particular documentation. This actually tells you that, okay, what is the basic series that can be utilized for the for the particular set of for the particular set of categories of that particular IPv4 domain, and here you can see for private addressing, these are some of the these are some of the addressing schemes that you can use. So 10, the internet, not internet, the IPv4 series, that is starting from 10, 172, and 192 are the prominent one which is going to be utilized for this. And the prefixes for CIDR can be used from the 16 to 28 in this particular context. So let me take you back to this particular part. So if I want to use this particular 10 series network in this particular context, if I'm using 16 as a net mask, right? So 16 as a net mask means, so let me just demonstrate you it on the presentation part. Let me just take you over here. So let's say if I'm saying some IP is going to be there, so 10.0.0.0 and slash 16, right? So if I try to convert this particular each octal into the decimal part, it is going to be 0.0.0.1.0.1.0.0.0.0.0.0.0, right? And then dot again, 8 zeros are going to be there, and then again 8 zeros are going to be there, right? So this is what this particular, right now this particular address is resembling me, right? So here if I say 16 as a net mask, for this particular IP series, right? So in that particular context, whatever the first 16 leftmost 16 bits are going to be there, they are going to represent my network, right? So this is going to be the particular information about the particular network bits only, right? So this is going to define my network as a 16 bit, and whatever the rest of the particular thing is going to be defining me the host or the net number of nodes that you can have on that particular network, right? So that means 2 raised to power 16 is going to be the number of nodes that we can have on this particular set, this which is going to be around 65,535 nodes, right? So starting from 0 to this particular set, right? So overall, it is going to be 65536, but because we cannot use 0, so that is going to be there. So here, if you look at the particular decimal, so you can see how many number of IPs are available. As soon as I try to increase the number of bits for the particular net mask, so we are going to take it from the left-hand side bits, right? So as many bits you are going to utilize, the number of IPs that are available, the number of hosts which you can put into that particular network is going to get reduced, right? So depending upon what is the size of your organization, what is the size of your number of compute resources or network nodes that you want to put in, you can have this particular series created, and corresponding to this particular series, whatever the sub networks you are going to create in the availability zones that you are going to get that particular range divided into those particular sub networks, right? So that you can actually go and see once we have this particular VPC up and running on our particular set, right? Now coming on to the next set, next option or next feature, that it says IPv6 CIDR block. So this, as I mentioned, that AWS allows you to have dual stack. So IPv6 is optional, whereas IPv4 is required to be, given. It's mandatory. So IPv4, that is why it is asking. IPv6, if you want to have, so the Amazon provided CIDR block will be provided, and that is how it is going to be managed internally, right? So this is what you get. Now, one of the benefit of using the IPv6 is that the IPv6 doesn't require a network address translation, right? So if you have any kind of static IPs allocated, that can also be managed to brought into this particular set, and they are unique in nature if you expose them to the internet. So that is what is the utilization of this particular IPv6. If you are working in that particular tenancy, you can work it out, right? Then tenancy, we have already spoke about that. Whatever the feature we put over here, whatever the section, either dedicated or default, the same is going to be applicable on your EC2 instance. Now coming on to the next particular set is the availability zone. So how many zones you want to make this particular network available? Is it 1? So that means no replication is going, or redundancy of your network is going to be there, or subnetting is going to be there. If you have 2, you can have the multiple networks, and if you have 3, you can have all the 3 availability zones are to be given with the are to be provisioned with the subnets for that particular network, right? So that is what is going to be there. So for the higher availability purposes, you can have minimum of 2, and whatever the next number of availability zones you wanted to have, depending upon that, you are going to see that. So in this particular section, this is going to be allocated. Now, in case if you want to have a very specifically, assigned zones, that okay, what will be the first availability zone and what will be the second availability zone, that you can mention into this particular set, right? So what can be the first, what can be second, as per that, it is going to be displaying you in this particular chart. Till this particular place, no actual subnet is going to be created. It is just a visualization that is being displayed into this particular set, and this clearly indicates that how the VPC is being created. So you can see the top level is VPC, then you get subnets, and then in each subnet you get routing tables, and then you get the network connections that are going to be connecting all these things together, right? So if you click on the check on the VPC or highlight the VPC, you will find how the connections are happening. If you go and further select the subnets, then on the basis of what type of subnet they are, it is going to be connecting to that particular specific routing table, and based on what routing table you are actually connecting to, it is going to connect you to the further network connection into this particular place, right? Now I'm coming on to this particular set, public and private part, right? So the public and private subnets are being created inside of each individual availability zone. So you can clearly see the number of public subnets that you are looking for. Is it 0 or is it 2? Because we have asked for the availability zone, which is going to be 2 at this particular place. As soon as I choose the availability zone 1, you will find that the public subnets are going to be 1 and the private subnets are going to be 1 again, right? So if I have 2 availability zones, then I have 2 private subnets to be allocated to, right? Or public subnets to be allocated. So if I select it as 0, let's say the number of public subnets are going to be 0. Now, why they are going to be 0? Let's say whatever the resources I create inside of that particular VPC, the compute network resources, they're not supposed to be connected to the network, connected to the internet, not network, connected to the internet, right? So in that case, I need to keep this particular value as 0. And you will clearly see as soon as I remove that particular public network, the gateway is also been removed, right? So if I choose the particular public subnets to be connected to the particular internet, you will see that internet gateway has been created correspondingly, right? So that has been visualized. So that's the use of this particular subnet. So if you want your instances, the EC2 instances, to be connected directly to the internet, then you have to have this particular public subnet to be created, and this will instruct the system to assign the IP address, public IP address from the AWS public IP pool, right? So that is going to be there. So we are having 2 public networks to be created, and similarly the number of private subnets that you want to create. So is it 0 or is it 2 or is it 4, depending upon what you are going to have in this particular context, right? So if you want to have more subnets to be created, more than one subnet to be created in single availability zone, this is how you can create that particular set. And apart from that, in case if you want to have the separate series of network to be created, or separate series of addressing is to be created for each particular set of subnet, you have the possibility to do that particular thing in the customized subnet CIDR blocks level, right? So this is where you can have a complete customization, and that is going to help you in really defining that what could be the possible range of IPs that can be provided into this particular set, right? And finally, the last 2 settings, they are going to defining that how much price you are going to pay for the data transfers that are going to happen. So NAT gateway is going to be created in the availability zone basis, right? And as many as availability zones you are going to create, it is going to levy charges for the creation of network address translation gateway, and this is going to be utilized for translating the address for one type of network to the another, right? So generally this has been done when you are connecting more than one set of AWS regions or the on-premises part, right? So that it plays a separate role, right? So generally it can be avoided by using the VPC endpoint. So let's say internally you wanted to utilize certain services like S3, then this particular VPC endpoint for the S3 can help you to overcome the requirement of the NAT into this particular internal network, right? So that is going to be there in this particular state. So NAT can be avoided into this particular state at the first place. If it is required, definitely required, then you can go for it. And if in case if your EC2 instance is going to be utilizing other services like S3, you can create a VPC gateway, and that will also work. And it's not like mandatory to create it, right? You can avoid this as well, to remove this particular VPC gateway connection. So that means you are only requiring to have the communication between the instances, not the other set of things, right? So this is how the workable set can be created, right? And last option is that, do you want the DNS host names to be enabled for that particular instances that are EC2 instances that are going to be created inside of this particular VPC, or you only want to have the DNS resolution on the basis of IP and so on, right? So that is going to be there. So with these particular settings, once I go and hit create VPC button, you will find that all these particular components are going to get generated into this particular set, right? So subnets you can create, you have created two subnets have been created in each availability zone, where one is going to be for the public network and another is going for the private network of that particular availability zone. And you will see that there are three routing tables which have been created. One routing table for public network, where you are going to connect to through the internet gateway to the outside internet network, and whereas the other two are going to be for the internal networking of your subnets, right? So that is going to be there in this particular set. So here, if I hit create VPC, as soon as I hit create VPC, you will find a couple of set of components are going to get created. So it creates a VPC, it creates a DNS host name, enable DNS resolution, verifying whatever the VPC has been created, then creating the 4 subnets that are being asked for, creating an internet gateway, attaching it to the VPC, then creating the routing tables and associating those routing tables with the respective subnets, and so on has been done. And at last, the routing table has been verified. And as soon as all these particular things have been done, you are good to go to see your particular VPC that has been there. So till this particular time, what we have done is we went to AWS Cloud and we asked the AWS Cloud to create a separate isolated network for the resources that I am going to create inside of that particular VPC, right? So it is going to be isolated, and more or less it will work as a traditional network, but on the public cloud service providers resources, right? So that is what you have. So this is what is the way that you are going to create your particular VPC in the first place. And as soon as you create your VPC, you will find a couple of other resources that have been created. So here you can see the VPC ID, a unique ID is being given, and here you can see the DHCP option are being set for that particular VPC, so that every time an EC2 instance is going to be connected, it is going to be allocated with a private IP. Then main routing table has been created, and the main ACL, the access control list, is going to be created. So this access control list is one that is going to define that, okay, what kind of port is going to receive the particular packet and what kind of outgoing packets are going to be there, right? So this is what is being defined into this. Then the main routing table is going to contain the information that how the packets are going to be routed within the particular subnet and so on. Otherwise, you can see what is the base CIDR is being defined. What are the flow logs can be created into this particular set, which I'm going to explain you in the next sessions. And the tags which we have just created over here, you can see, right? So just to give you an idea, in next 10 minutes, I'm going to close this particular session, because this has been for, I think, more than 30 minutes we have been talking about this. So I wanted to keep these particular sessions as short as I can, so that you should be able to grasp the things one by one. So just to show you quickly, so if I go back to your VPCs, whatever the list of VPCs that we have, you can see the live demo VPC has been created just now, right? And what are the other information? They are being listed out over here in this particular set, right? Now, apart from this, if I click on this particular VPC, it takes me to these particular set of information. Again, I take you back to the list, and if I select this particular VPC, you will be able to see some more details, and those details are being same what has been displayed on the other page, right? So there's not a big difference. Then you go to the subnets, right? So as soon as you go to the subnets, you will find, let me just choose it on the basis of VPC, and that VPC is going to be, okay, so I just need to check what is the last number. So this is 13B. Okay. So subnets, and on the basis of VPC 13B. So here you can see what are the four different set of subnets that are being created. So you can see one subnet is public and one subnet is private for a particular availability zone. The other subnet is private, and the other and there is one more public subnet that is going for the other availability zone. So there were two availability zones that we have used. This subnet has been given us very specific unique ID. It belongs to a particular VPC, and then you can actually see that how many particular number of IPs are available. Even though, if you have seen carefully, 256 hosts were available to be created for this particular individual subnet, but because AWS also utilizes some of the particular IP addresses, so 5 IP addresses are being reserved by the AWS, so they are not being included in this particular set, right? So the availability zone is being given, the routing table specific to this particular subnet is being given, the network ACL is also been given. So if I go to the detail of this particular single routing, this single subnet, you will see what are the other details it has been mentioning. So VPC, routing table, network ACL, and the what kind of IPv4 CDR is going to be there, what kind of availability zone is going to be there. You can create a flow logs that what traffic has been going out and in for this particular subnet. What is the routing table right now? Because this is a private routing table, so it is going to only supporting the local as a target. Whereas if this would have been a public routing table, you might see that the particular access is being given to the internet gateway, right? So this second entry has been provided so that anywhere can be accessed. So this is basically a destination. So any address which is other than the local network, that is going to be routed through this particular internet gateway, and that is where the translation of the address is going to happen by default, right? So this is going to be available in that. Network ACL is going to define the routing rules. So right now all the traffics are being allowed. So if you want to edit this particular network ACL, you can have that particular inbound rules and outbound rules can be defined corresponding to each individual set of ports, right? So instead of all traffic, let's say you only want to allow TCP traffic into this particular set, right? So that can be worked out. So these are some of the features which are available. So let me take you back to the one again. So network ACL is going to be defining what kind of inbound and outbound traffic is going to be allowed. So this is more or less of a firewall on this network level. Then CIDR reservation, if there is any kind of IPs you want to reserve which are not supposed to be allocated to any of the EC2 instance, that can become given over here. Any kind of resource sharing that we are going to have for this particular subnet is going to be there. And last is going to be the tags for this, right? So this is the second thing that is being created. Third thing is the routing tables. So you can see over here what are the routing tables that are being created. So here, if I go to the VPC, and if I choose that particular specific VPC that we have just created, so you can see what are the routing tables that have been created. So one public routing table was created and two private subnets have been created. So if you choose one, you will be able to see the route table is going to define that, okay, this particular subnet is going to allow the local traffic as well as the traffic which is going to be go outside of that particular network subnet, right? And similarly, these are the two other subnets that are being given corresponding to this particular route, right? So that's how you can have the thing. So if you want to have more targets to be achieved in this particular route, that can be done into this particular, that can be done by editing the routes and so on. Finally, what we created is the internet gateway, and you can see the internet gateway that has been provided over here is going to be getting this particular information, right? So this internet gateway is basically an entity that is going to allow your subnet to send the packets outside of the private network, right? So this is where the AWS internal working is going to work, right? So that's the beauty of having this single VPC created, and that VPC is going to create the further components around it, right? And similarly, the DHCP, the last point, the DHCP has been there, that is going to be working around with that particular network, right? So that's been allowed to be utilized into this particular set. So this is how a very basic VPC can be created, that is virtual private cloud, one of the most fundamental component that you are going to have inside of your particular AWS. Without this, you cannot create your EC2 instances. And if you see this particular entry where no tag name has been given, this is basically a default VPC. That means when this account was created, right, at that particular point of time, this VPC has been this VPC was created by default. Now coming on to the creation of the network. So VPC, we are going, if I launch this particular EC2 instance, right? Sorry for being at a lower end. So if I go to the EC2 creation of the EC2 instance, here you will be finding selecting this particular EC2 instance, selecting the target, and then selecting that particular network that you are going to have. So right now we created this particular live demo VPC, right? So this is going to help you out in creating the particular set of things. So you select this particular VPC, and then you have the option to select which particular subnet you wanted to create, right? So this is where that VPC is going to get reflected into, right? So all these particular information that actually started from this particular VPC. So you went to VPC, just to give you a brief idea. You went to VPC, then you created that particular VPC with different options. So VPC, once it has been created, the subnets are being created, they are being listed out. You can see the live demo VPC has been listed out for 4 different subnets. 2 are for the public, 2 are for the private. Then the respective routing tables have been created corresponding to those particular set of VPCs. So you can see there are 3 routing tables which have been created. One is for connecting the public network to the internet gateway. So if I click on this particular routing ID, you can see how the internet gateway has been put into that particular routing table as a destination. And similarly, you have an internet gateway that has been created for this particular live demo VPC, and you're using the DHCP option that has been set into this particular part, right? So this is how your small VPC can be created. So with this, I think I can stop this particular particular demo, and I hope this particular demo has given you an idea on that how a basic concept of networking is being integrated inside the VPC, inside the Amazon Web Services, right? And without this particular virtual private cloud concept, you will not be able to set up your EC2 instances or any of the other network nodes, right? So with this, I think I can stop the demo. And once again, thank you very much for joining into this particular live. I hope you guys have got some information out of this particular session, some new addition to your skill knowledge. I hope you're going to practice this in your own time, and I wish that you should be able to work it around without any much of the hurdle. So that is what I have for you. So at last, I can just request you to just let me know how did you like the session, and what could be the possible changes I can make to my session delivery, so that you should be able to understand understand the concept well when I'm going to deliver it to you. And please do let me know in the comment section, so that I get an idea that how did you like these particular set of sessions. And definitely now I'm going to have a few more sessions, as I already mentioned at the start, that there will be around 10 to 15 sessions on Amazon Web Services network and content delivery topic. So this is the first day. So we have just picked up the very basic one, and in the upcoming days we are going to build up our rest of the topics on these sessions, whatever we cover now, right? So once again, thank you very much for joining in. And this is Anupinder Singh, a software engineer turned university professor, and now a corporate technical trainer with Superwits Academy. Signing off. See you in other upcoming sessions tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Bye bye. See you.